Viridian, the Green Guide. By My Head in the Clouds Not Coming Down, a Boku no Hero Academia fanfic. Chapter 37. Goals. Katsuki stared at his paper blankly, with the sound of pens scratching on paper around him as a taunting backdrop to his most recent failure. According to Amplifier, for this most recent exercise, he was supposed to write a list to describe the kind of person he wanted to be. But he was at a loss. Nobody else seemed to be having problems with the assignment. As soon as Amplifier had said go, each of the villains started writing furiously, making Katsuki feel even more ridiculous for sitting there 10 minutes later with nothing to show for his work but a few scribbles and a headache. His entire life, he'd always known what he wanted to be. He was going to be the best, and that was all there was to it. There was no point in worrying about being mean or angry or anything else, because all that mattered was getting to the top, which was how he ended up in this whole mess. So it obviously wasn't good enough. But if he wasn't shooting to be the best, then who was he trying to be? His first thought was that he could be like All Might. Izuku had always said that he was going to be just like All Might and save people with a smile. Kids all over the place wanted to be like All Might, so it couldn't be a bad goal. The only problem was that while a part of Katsuki wanted that, the bigger part knew it just wasn't realistic. He wasn't the kind of person who could save people with a smile. He was scary. So while his smile might be able to terrify villains, civilians would probably scream and run away. Which honestly made him more similar to Endeavor. But that didn't seem right either. Endeavor wasn't just harsh with his fans, he was downright rude, and probably more violent than he needed to be when taking down villains. In short, he reminded Katsuki way too much of how he'd acted for his entire life so far. And staying a bully wasn't an option anymore. His commitment letter to Izuku felt heavy in his pocket as he made another scribble on the corner of his paper, so it wouldn't look like he was just sitting there doing nothing like an idiot. Amplifier said that the letters were for them, and Katsuki honestly didn't know how to explain the whole thing to Izuku or Auntie Inko. So he ended up folding the letter and putting it in his wallet instead of delivering it. He wasn't sure if he liked or hated having it with him all the time. It made his wallet feel heavier somehow. It was like the weight of all his actions was always with him as a constant reminder. But at the same time, it was like putting the weight in his pocket had taken it out of his heart. Katsuki rolled his eyes and made another scribble. That sounded too damn sappy. It was like, well, he didn't know how to explain it, but it didn't feel so overwhelming anymore. It was almost like he might actually be able to become better someday. All right, everyone. Good work today. Amplifier's voice made him jump. Be sure to remember what you wrote down today during this next week. That dream person you described is your goal from now on, and I know that if you work hard, you'll be able to get there. See you next week. Katsuki crumbled the blank paper in his fist and shoved it in his pocket as he stalked towards the door. Later, Amplifier. Sure thing, Bakugo, Amplifier said cheerfully. Be good this week. Katsuki scoffed out a habit before pushing open the door and rushing to leave the community center before Ogawa and the others could try and talk to him. He didn't really want to have to deal with them right now, not after his absolute failure during today's activity. The universe, however, apparently didn't care what he wanted. Hey Bakugo, wait up. Katsuki hunched his shoulders a little more and pretended not to hear Ogawa's puppy voice behind him as he walked a little faster. Unfortunately, he was a still-growing teenager, and the extras that decided to adopt him for some reason were full-grown adults with much longer legs, which meant that he didn't get very far before he had to step backwards to avoid running into Maki's giant body as he stepped in front of him. Hey kid, why you running away? He gave Katsuki a wide, lopsided grin. Don't you like it anymore? I never liked you, Katsuki said, rude out of habit more than anything else. Aw, straight through a heart. I don't think I'll ever recover. Akito placed a hand over her chest dramatically. But joking aside, That was a pretty cool exercise, wasn't it? Yeah, Ogawa agreed. It was like we were picking out our avatar in a video game. A perfect version of ourselves. Katsuki scoffed, but didn't respond, which was apparently the wrong course of action, because Akido leaned into his personal space. Her interest piqued. "What'd you write, Bakugo?" Katsuki tried to push past her, but she braced herself against Maki, so he turned around and tried to go the other way, only to be met with Ogawa. "If you're trying to hide it, then it must be pretty good, huh? Come on, man. Let's see the paper." "Fuck off." Ogawa laughed. "Nah, don't think I will. Where is your paper anyway?" "I saw him put it in the right pocket before we left," Maki said helpfully. Katsuki glared at him, but he simply grinned in return. Katsuki growled, but it wasn't like he hadn't physically trained his body as part of his preparation for UA. So, he should be able to get around these extras easily. He dodged to the left, causing Akito to move in an attempt to head him off. As she reached to grab him, Katsuki feigned right before continuing to the left. He was almost home free when Ogawa gripped his arm. Katsuki whirled around and twisted his arm. Not enough to hurt him, just enough to make him let go. Then try again to make his escape, only for Akito to block him again. It went on this way for a few minutes as Katsuki dodged and blocked their attempts to grab his empty piece of paper, until they were all starting to run out of breath. "Ogawa, huh?" Akito panted. "Can't you use your tentacles to reach in his pockets and grab it?" Katsuki tensed, preparing himself for a quirked assault when Ogawa shook his head. "No, not without trigger or some other drug. I can barely stretch them to reach my shoulder without straining something." "Ha!" Katsuki crouched triumphantly, ready to take off. "I guess I win." "Not so fast." He heard Maki's voice behind him, and before he could turn around to face the new threat, Maki had firmly pinned both his arms against his sides and lifted him a foot off the ground. He could still get out, probably, if he used his explosions. But the last person he had used his quirk against was Izuku. Akito smirked and grabbed the crumpled paper from his pocket. Katsuki struggled against Maki's hold as she began to straighten it out. "I thought you guys were trying to be nicer and all that jazz. I hate to break it to you, but this isn't nice." Maki dropped him, and Katsuki immediately tried to grab the note back from Akito, but Ogawa stepped between them to block his path. Smiling cheerily, "Sorry, dude, but we're not redeemed yet. Technically, we're still villains, and I hate to break it to you, but villains steal." Katsuki glared at him as Akito finally finished unwrinkling his paper and did a double take. "Wait, why is it blank? Did you hide the real one somewhere else?" "Shut up. It's none of your business." Katsuki used the opening to snatch the paper back and stuff it back in his pockets as he began stalking away. "You don't know what you want to be, do you?" Katsuki was already glaring at Ogawa as he turned around, expecting to find judgment, mockery, and condescension written all over his face. It was supposed to be a simple exercise, so Katsuki knew he deserved it if Ogawa was looking down on him. Not that he'd admit that out loud, but still, he was expecting to find something. Instead, his scowl melted as he realized that Ogawa was looking at him with understanding, not contempt. He scoffed. "Whatever. I've spent my whole life trying to be the best, and look where that got me now." Maki nodded calmly. "And now you feel like you've been cut loose." Katsuki shrugged. So they weren't mocking him, but that still didn't make him any less of a failure. He was about to start walking away again, because there was no point just standing around, forcing these guys to feel sorry for him, when Ogawa smiled brightly. "Then we'll just have to help you figure it out." That, more than anything else, threw Katsuki for a loop. "What?" "Oh yeah, this is gonna be fun, so," Akito drawled. "What do you want to be?" Katsuki simply leveled a deadpan glare at her. "If I knew that, I wouldn't have left the paper blank, you idiots." All right, she laughed. "I'll give you that one." "Maybe what do you want to accomplish?" Maki suggested. Finally, an easy question. I want to be a better person so I can apologize to Izuku and actually mean it. Ogawa nodded. Okay, that's a start. What does being better look like to you? Katsuki glared at him. If I knew that, then you wouldn't have left the paper blank, Akito finished. So, what are you apologizing for in the first place? For making his life miserable. Katsuki looked at the floor. For hurting him? So being a better person would mean... Ogawa trailed off, like he was expecting Katsuki to finish the sentence. Not hurting people? It couldn't be that simple, could it? Katsuki had stopped going out of his way to hurt others, and he still felt like a heaping pile of garbage. So, that couldn't be everything. I mean, you should probably go a little deeper than that, because you got a whole blank paper to fill. But it's a start. Write it down, Akito ordered. Katsuki rolled his eyes, but made his way to a nearby bench and sat down with the paper on the seat next to him, so he had someplace hard to write, and obediently wrote down, "Don't hurt people," as the first bullet point. Okay, what next? Ogawa scratched his head as he thought, his tentacles wriggling aimlessly. Well, you said you wanted to be a hero, right? Gee, thanks for remembering, Katsuki said dryly. Ogawa laughed. Yeah, well, what do heroes do? That felt like a trick question. They stop villains. Yes, they do. Maki seemed to have picked up on Ogawa's train of thought. But why? Because villains are bad people that need to be stopped? Katsuki thought that should be pretty obvious, but apparently not, because Akito scoffed. Are you seriously telling me you never learned the first rule of hero work? What are you? Katsuki's eyes widened. Prioritize the rescue. Ogawa smiled proudly. Bingo. So? I can't just avoid hurting people, Katsuki said. I need to stop other people from hurting them too. Sounds like a good goal to me, Maki smiled. Write it down. Katsuki was almost tempted to smile as he wrote down his second bullet point. But then he remembered all the extras that were still getting away with murder at his school. Sure, Katsuki hadn't actually participated in bullying since Izuku left, but he hadn't done anything to stop it either. That was a lot more intimidating, which led him to his next goal. I don't want to be scared to do the right thing, he said confidently, even if that means admitting I was wrong. You're talking about the bullying, right? Maki asked. Admitting to something like that sounds really difficult, especially when you want to be a hero. Yeah, Katsuki said stiffly, but the extras in my school are gonna talk if I all of a sudden start protecting the nerds. But you want to, right? Ogawa asked. Of course I do, Katsuki snapped. But I was the worst bully in my school. Half the other kids probably started picking on the nerds because they were following me around. If I suddenly switch sides like this, they're gonna call me out on it. If they have a problem with you cleaning up your act, then that's their problem, Akito said sternly. You don't owe your old lackeys an explanation. Just like I don't owe my ex-boyfriend a callback. That made Katsuki laugh. He wrote down, don't be too big of a coward to own up to mistakes, and don't feel obligated to give explanations to extras. There was probably better ways to phrase all that, but for now, he'd gotten the point across. Ogawa leaned on the back of the bench, so that he was looking at the paper over Katsuki's shoulder, and whistled. That's a pretty good list you got there. You could have anything else you want to add? Katsuki nodded, and put the pen down on the paper, before hesitating. On second thought, maybe that's not a good idea. Akito raised an eyebrow at him. What are you thinking? He frowned. I want to actually be worth being called a hero. But with all the shit I've done, I'm not like All Might. I'm angry and cruel, and I don't think it's realistic. Ogawa cuffed him upside the head. I'm gonna stop you right there, man. First off, nobody is All Might. Akito nodded. Sometimes I'm not convinced that he's not just some mass delusion we've created because, honestly, nobody's that perfect. Ogawa laughed. Yeah, what she said. You don't have to be like All Might to be a good hero, Bakugo. And, second off, are you sure this is what you want? What are you talking about? Katsuki growled. Of course I'm sure that's what I want. I just don't. Then put that on the list. You don't have to be everything on the list right now. That's what this whole redemption group thing is all about. It's a goal, Maki added. You'll get there. Katsuki hesitated for another long moment before Akido groaned. You screwball. I swear, if you don't write down your stupid goal right now, I'm going to steal that pen and write it for you. Don't tell me what to do, Katsuki griped, but wrote, Be worthy of being called a hero at the end of the list before folding up the paper nicely this time and sticking it in his wallet alongside his letter to Izuku. And maybe it was just a trick his mind was playing on him, but as he said goodbye and started walking home, Katsuki couldn't help but notice that he felt a little lighter.